Thanks for our colleagues in the French department. You're listening to Damascus Radio, the broadcasting service of the Syrian Arab Republic. Calling from Damascus, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Our 60-minute English hour transmission for tonight, Sunday, the 9th of September 2012, hours till midnight Damascus local time, which is from 20 hours till 21 hours Greenwich Mean Time. We transmit our program through the following satellites: Arabsat orbit location 26 degrees east, frequency 12,054 vertical, symbol rate 27,500, FEC 3/4. Nilesat orbit location 7 degrees west, frequency 11,823 vertical, symbol rate 27,500, FEC 5 to 6. And Hotbird orbit location 13 degrees east, frequency 12,015 horizontal, symbol rate 27,500, FEC 3/4, directed to the Arab homeland, North Africa and Europe. You can also listen to a recording of our program through the internet by logging onto our websites, which are www.syriaonline.sy. Then click the link Radio Programs. The other alternative website, www.radio-damascus.net. Our program for tonight includes the following: our news bulletin after this opening, which will be read by Rashid Haidar and Basim Bagdash, to be followed by news and views, and then by press review. At around 30 minutes past 23 hours Damascus local time, you'll be listening to a new edition of our weekly program, Arab Press in a Week, to be followed by a new edition of our weekly program, Music from the Orient. After that, you're invited to listen to a collection of musical breaks and varieties selected by our sound technician Hamad Qarahili until 2 minutes to midnight. That is when we present our news summary and sign off as usual with the national anthem exactly at midnight Damascus local time, which is 21 hours Greenwich Mean Time. You're listening to Damascus Radio, the broadcasting service of the Syrian Arab Republic. And now, stay tuned for the news.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for our news bulletin for tonight, presented jointly by Basim Bagdash and Rashid Haidar. Our armed forces have released 30 persons who were kidnapped by the armed terrorist groups south the Vocational Training Institute in Maysalun area in Aleppo. In a qualitative operation, the armed forces also killed members of an armed terrorist group, including snipers, near al-Ansari Mosque in Maysalun area in Aleppo. The armed forces also targeted terrorists who fled from Maysalun area towards al-Safa and Ashar neighborhoods, killing a number of them. Another unit of our armed forces clashed with terrorists near Al-Furqan Mosque in Al-Arqub area in Aleppo, inflicting heavy losses upon the terrorists. In Homs, the armed forces also carried out a qualitative operation against terrorists in Al-Hamidiyya neighborhood, killing 7 terrorists, including Yusuf Hamoud, who is wanted for committing a number of crimes. Meanwhile, 4 passengers were martyred and 35 others were injured in a terrorist attack against a bus near Azibak town on Masyaf Homs highway on Sunday. Sana reporter quoted a source in Homs province as saying that an armed terrorist group detonated explosive device planted under the road near the aforementioned town. The explosion resulted in the martyrdom of a woman and 3 others. In Hama, the authorities have stormed into a terrorist den in Tal Qartsal in southern side of the province and arrested several terrorists with their weapons. Sana reporter said that the weapons confiscated included machine guns and pistols of various calibers with their ammunition. And in Dara, the authorities clashed with an armed terrorist group in Bushr al-Harir, killing many terrorists and seizing their weapons. In Damascus countryside, the armed forces carried out a qualitative operation in Deir al-Asafir, killing a number of terrorist mercenaries and arresting many of their leaders. Also, armed forces confiscated a car loaded with 68 automatic rifles, 2 machine guns, and ammunition in Al-Dumer. The armed forces also continued pursuing the armed terrorist groups in At-Tadamun and Palestine Street in Damascus. The army killed scores of mercenary terrorists, seized a hideout used by them to manufacture improvised explosive devices, and freed a number of kidnapped citizens. Meanwhile, 35 persons from Damascus and its countryside who got involved in the recent events in the country but did not shed blood were released on Sunday. They pledged not to take up arms again and returned to the acts which they had previously committed. Earlier in Homs, 277 persons who were misled into getting involved in the recent events and whose hands were clean of the Syrians' blood were released. A number of the released said that they turned themselves in after realizing the scope of the conspiracy against Syria in implementation of foreign agendas, indicating that the release signals a new beginning for them to move on with their lives to help build their society. It is to be remembered that on August the 27th, 38 persons who were involved in the latest events without committing a murder were released in Homs, as well as 332 persons in Damascus and 20 in Hama after pledging not to carry arms. Basim?
Thank you, Rashid. Chairman of the State Duma's International Affairs Committee, Alexei Pushkov, reiterated Russia's firm stance on the situation in Syria as renewed by the Russian President Vladimir Putin in his latest TV interview. During his meeting with the General Mufti of the Republic, Dr. Ahmed Badruddin Hassoun, and the Greek Orthodox Patriarchal Assistant, Bishop Luke Al-Khouri, at the Duma Council on Saturday, Pushkov said, Russia adopts firm, objective stances on Syria, and there is total concurrence between the executive and legislative authorities, the majority of parties and political and social movements, and the sweeping majority of the Russian public opinion in this regard. On his part, Mufti Hassoun hailed Russia's stance in support of the principles of the right and justice in Syria, stressing the resolve of all sincere Syrians, Muslims and Christians alike, and all the stripes of the Syrian society to adopt dialogue and negotiations without preconditions to get out of the current crisis. Bishop Luca said, the Christians are one of the core components of the Syrian people who are living in amity and concord with all their fellow compatriots. They reject all vindictive calls that incite them against their fellow nationals. He highlighted the crimes committed by the terrorist groups against peaceful citizens, Muslims and Christians who are destroying mosques, churches and wiping out entire families. Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Gennady Gatilov renewed his country's stance in advocacy of political dialogue in Syria to solve the crisis. Gatilov said in his Twitter account today that UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon knows well what the UN Security Council's members should do while discussing the crisis in Syria in the Council, stressing that what is important now is not discussing who are guilty, but rather the quick start of a political dialogue in the country through mediator tools available in the UN. Gatilov clarified that the crisis in Syria remains central to the Security Council, pointing out that Russia calls upon all its partners in this council to go back to the documented stances in the final statement of Geneva meeting about Syria. Foreign and Expatriates Ministry spokesman Jihad Maqdisi has said that some countries that do not want any good for Syria are laying landmines in the path of the UN envoy to Syria, al-Ibrahimi. More details are in this following report.
Foreign and Expatriates Ministry spokesman Dr. Jihad Maqdisi said that the reference points of the mission of the UN envoy to Syria, al-Akhdar al-Ibrahimi, are the UN 6-point plan and the Geneva Declaration, but any other point can be discussed in a manner that suits Syria and serves its stability, since Syria's interest lies in the success of Ibrahimi's mission. In an interview with Al-Mayadeen TV, Maqdisi said that the road to ending the crisis is well known and that it involves the cessation of violence by all sides and launching a political process led by the Syrians. He pointed out that the lack of an international accord is the cause of any mission's failure, saying that Western countries cannot play the role of fireman, and expressed concern over Syrians on one side while they continue to work with neighboring countries to smuggle weapons and harbor, train and send militants into Syria. Maqdisi voiced cautious optimism over Ibrahimi's mission, affirming that the government will provide him with all he needs to ensure success, adding that this requires having Ibrahimi visit the countries that harbor, train and fund militants and request them to cease these actions, in addition to having him request from the opposition to enter dialogue without preconditions. Maqdisi said that the liaison office which the UN will establish to help Ibrahimi is logistic in nature and has various divisions in the staff of 40 according to UN evaluations, and that its location and requirements are available. The spokesman affirmed that Syria opened its doors to international aid and is prepared to cooperate with international organizations that wish to provide aid without attaching this aid to political agendas. Maqdisi affirmed that any attempt to impose any sort of blockade over any part of Syria's territory is a violation of Syrian sovereignty that requires defending it, stressing that the Syrian Arab Army is prepared to do this, but he added that this issue isn't on the table and is rejected internationally.
In Iraq, Iraqi security sources announced today the killing of 11 Iraqi soldiers, including 2 officers, and the injury of 8 others in an attack on a checkpoint in the town of Balad to the north of Baghdad. A colonel in the Iraqi army said in a statement issued by the French news agency that armed elements have attacked the checkpoint at Balad, 70 kilometers to the north of Baghdad. Following the attack, the statement said, the armed men planted an explosive device that went off at the arrival of an assisting force from the army, which resulted in killing 11 soldiers, including 2 officers of the colonel and major ranks. In Egypt, the army has destroyed 31 tunnels on the borders between the Gaza Strip and the Egyptian lands used by the Strip residents to provide their basic needs during the ongoing closing of the Rafah crossing, being the only way out to the outside world following the Israeli siege on Gaza for years. During a press conference, the Egyptian Armed Forces spokesman, Colonel Ahmed Mohammed Ali, said that in coordination with the Israeli side, a security campaign has been launched during which the Egyptian army has destroyed those tunnels while chasing criminal elements in Sinai, putting the death toll of those elements at 33 as 38 outlaws were arrested. The spokesman added that light and heavy weapons have been confiscated during the operation. Now over to our final article with Basim.
Thank you very much, Rashid. In its first official comment on closing the Canadian embassy in Tehran and the Canadian threats to expel the Iranian diplomats in Canada, Iran stressed that this is an unjustified act, promising of an appropriate response. In a statement on the issue, the Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ramin Mehmanburst said that the current Canadian government is only implementing the US diktat, not taking the Canadian interest into consideration. Mehmanburst attributed the Canadian move against his country to the success of holding the non-aligned summit in Tehran despite all pressures by the Western states, which have tried to twist the facts and mislead the public opinion to show that Iran is isolated, which proved wrong at the Tehran summit.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, we conclude our news bulletin for tonight. Thank you for listening.
مطرح ما تحط رحالك
Damascus Radio presents News and Views.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The decision of freezing the broadcast of the Syrian satellite channels on Nilesat and Arabsat comes to reveal the ugly face of the conspiracy against Syria. The content of this decision came in completion of the political and terrorist aggression which is targeting Syria nowadays. This persistence of bringing more tools for targeting Syria's steadfastness reflects the bankrupt situation to which the conspiring sides have so far reached. Therefore, it is not surprising to see today this political and media dishonesty by those sides who target Syria. But as the Syrian people are adhered to their will and unity, those sides will not achieve their goals, and this will increase Syria's determination more than any time before to uproot terror and chase those who support and finance it. There is no doubt that the Syrian media is newly targeted as the conspiring sides failed to get on it by threats and aggressions. In fact, the Syrian media has been able to face the most notorious media campaign hatched against Syria, and it also will be able to face once again any aggression because it believes in its own message of defending the national and public causes.
That was News and Views from Damascus Radio.
كل ما اقول التوبة يا ابويا ترميني المقادير يا عين ترميني المقادير يا عين وحشان عيونه السودا يا ابويا ومدوبني الحنين يا عين ومدوبني الحنين يا عين متغرب والليالي يا ابويا مش سايباني في حالي يا عين متغرب والليالي يا ابويا مش سايباني في حالي يا عين والرمش اللي مجرحني يا ابويا ضيعني وانا كان مالي يا عين الرمش اللي مجرحني يا ابويا ضيعني وانا كان مالي يا عين وانا كل ما اقول التوبه يا ابويا ترميني المقادير يا عيني ترميني المقادير يا عين وحشان عيون السودا يا ابويا ومدوبني الحنين يا عيني ومدوبني الحنين يا عين يا رموش قتالة وجرحة يا ابويا وعيون نعسانة وسرحة يا عين يا رموش قتالة وجرحة يا ابويا وعيون نعسانة وسرحة يا عين اديك يا عمري بحاله يا ابويا واديني انت الفرحة يا عين اديني انت الفرحة يا عين وانا كل ما اقول التوبة يا ابويا ترميني المقادير يا عين ترميني المقادير يا عين وحشان عيونه السودا يا ابويا ومدوبني الحنين يا عين ومدوبني الحنين يا عين القلب الاخضراني يا ابويا دبلت فيه الاغاني يا عين القلب الاخضراني يا ابويا دبلت فيه الاغاني يا عين ولا قادر طول غيبتكوا يا عيني يشرب من بحر تاني يا ابوي، ولا قادر طول غيبتكوا يا عيني يشرب من بحر تاني يا ابوي. وانا كل ما اقول التوبه يا ابويا ترميني المجادير يا عيني، ترميني المجادير يا عيني، وحشان عيونه السودا يا ابويا ومدوبني الحنين يا عيني، ومدوبني الحنين يا عيني. وانا كل ما اقول التوبه يا ابويا ترميني المجادير، ترميني المجادير، ترميني المجادير.
Damascus Radio presents Syrian Local Press Review.
Hello, dear listeners, to all of you. The Syrian dailies issued today in Damascus highlighted the following headlines and news items. Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov says Russia will push for adopting Geneva Agreement on Syria at the Council. Our armed forces release 30 kidnapped and killed terrorists in Aleppo and Hamas. Foreign and Expatriates Ministry spokesman Maqdisi says some countries that don't want Syria's good are laying landmines in the path of the UN envoy to Syria, al-Ibrahimi. Our armed forces carry out qualitative operation inflicting heavy losses on terrorists in their al-Asafir. Chairman of the State Duma's International Affairs Committee, Alexei Boshkov, says there is concerness in Russia on the Russian pro-Syria stance. 35 persons involved in recent events without committing murder are released. In its editorial under the title Proxy War, the Syrian daily Athora quoted the correspondent of the Austrian newspaper, the Wiener Zeitung in Damascus, Thomas Sitford, as saying in a report that the West, Turkey and the Gulf are waging proxy war against Syria through terrorists. Stifert added that the duty of the Syrian leadership is to remove the terrorists from the urban areas and protect the civilians. The report included several testimonies made by the residents of Al-Midan neighborhood in Damascus, expressing relief after the Syrian armed forces entered the area as they put an end to the violence acts which had been committed by the armed terrorist groups. The report quoted the locals as saying that what is happening in Syria is an international conspiracy against Syria and its people.
That was a review of the Syrian local press issued in Damascus this morning.
ما بعرف وين لقيت ولا بعرف وين حكيت، شو بعرف حبيت ولحقت دغري على بيت وأكتر من هيك ما بعرف وين لقيت ولا بعرف وين حكيت، شو بعرف حبيت ولحقت دغري على بيت وأكتر من هيك ما بعرف. عدروب دروب سبقتني ونهر غروب أخدتني، عدروب دروب سبقتني ونهر غروب أخدتني، عدروب دروب سبقتني عنهر غروب أخدتني ملت لي مي وسقيتني برمت لي راسي دوختني يمكن كتبت لي سحرتني وغلت بقلبي وخبيتها ما بعرف وين لقيتها ولا بعرف وين حكيتها شو بتعرف
حبيتها ولحقتها دغري على بيتها أكتر من هيك
ما بعرف يا قلبي عود لحبابك بكفة نود عالصابك يا قلبي عود لحبابك بكفة نود عالصابك يا قلبي عود لحبابك بكفة نود عالصابك سألوني عنك أصحابك والحلوة دقت على بابك يا قلبي طولت غيابك زهرة بدموعك ربيتها ما بعرف وين لقيتها ولا بعرف وين حكيتها شو بتعرف بعرف حبيتها ولحقتها دغري على بيتها وأكتر من هي ما بعرف أكتر من هي ما بعرف أكتر من هي ما بعرف
Damascus Radio presents Arab's Radio, a weekly program prepared by Afaf al-Nablsi and read by Lama Sainz. With the company of sound engineer Suhail Khoury.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. The Syrian crisis remains an old paper's taboo this week. The paper takes advantage to follow up Western intervention, the aim of which is to deepen the crisis and alienate it of the solution. The Arab press elaborates on Turkey's involvement in Syrian file and about the aggression on Syria as pursued by the Erdogan government. Entitled Scrutiny takes the Arab press to elaborate on the mission of the newly appointed UN peace envoy to Syria about components of either success or failure for his mission. The Zionist aggression continues to be talked about in detail. The dispatching of the papers carried thorough reporting on the panic and fear having its overhang on the Israeli title. On the same subject, the Zionist entity, the Arab press, is in agreement that Israel has lost its long-acclaimed hegemony on the area while other powers take place. Now to details. The Jordanian daily Diyar foresees that the death regimes in the West did fail to realize their objectives and proposes in as much as the Gulf trumpets also fail. And the West continues to commit lies with hypocrisy exactly as the Zionist intelligence media do. In occupied Jerusalem, the holy city, Al-Manar daily sees that Turkey's Premier Erdogan is facing dire criticism inside the Turkish arena only because of his policies which damage the Turkish people and their interests, which threatens his own government. Al-Manar adds that some Turkish circles accuse the foreign minister Davut Oglu for passing armed policies which interact with the American and Zionist schemes. Al-Manar adds that Oglo, who himself chief cuisine, has year-long ties with America's security organs and upon him Washington mainly relies. The Persian Daily fingers Oglo as the number one responsible for the close ties with Israel, as he is among the advocates of alliance between Ankara and Tel Aviv. In Oman, Al-Watan Daily asks whether the catch talk about isolated zones is still in circulation between minds that perceive the arduous difficulties to install them, and yet they demand their establishment. Al-Watan considers Turkey the one qualified for the job, as Turkey demands now and again for the zones along Syria's territories. The Armani Daily indicates that all papers or players in the Syrian crisis are well aware of the difficulties of the task, which indeed means war, so that Syria will retaliate with counter-war, and the players have all possibilities to intervene despite the falsity of the no-rolling, unrolling war on the Syrian lands means only more gunmen and more infiltration of them into Syria. Now to the UN new peace envoy to Syria. The Tunisian paper Ash-Shuruq anticipated extreme difficulty for the mission of the Akhdar al-Ibrahimi on two basic counts. Firstly, the absence of international accord, a general one about any feasibility of political solution that entails his capacity to pick Syria out from its dark crisis. The second major count is that the armed groups area being fully instigated by the West and some Arabs. The paper stresses success in the Levant must be from within and through the Levant. All that will prod patriotic titles. All this go if al-Ibrahim opts to mind something, at least of the errors and sins that prepared in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Damascus Radio presents Arab Radio, a weekly program prepared by Afaq al-Nablusi and read by Lena Slice.
Damascus Radio presents Music from the Orient. A weekly program prepared and presented by Rashid Haidar. Directed by Suhair Khouri. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this new edition of Music from the Orient. The interaction between the Arab and Spanish people resulted in great accomplishments. One of them was the Muwashahat, Terzarima pieces, which were transferred by the Spanish troubadours to the Arab poets. The Muwashahat are strophic songs that originated in Andalusia. They are multi-rhymed and multi-metered poems in classical Arabic. The melodies and structure of Muwashahat can vary in sophistication. The genre is performed by a chorus, alternating with a soloist who is accompanied by a small group of instrumentalists.
لا ورد في عنا ولا ياسمين، لا جناين كبيرة ولا بساتين، عالناس طيحة والقمر والليل، وسهراتنا الحلوة مع الحلوين. حلو يا سهرنا عسطح الدار، والحلو قمرنا زعل وطار. حلو يا سهرنا عسطح الدار، والحلو قمرنا زعل وطار. حلو يا سهرنا عسطح الدار، والحلو قمرنا زعل وطار. حلو يا سهرنا عسطح الدار، والحلو قمرنا زعل وطار. زعل القمر وتغير السهر، ضيعنا الغنية بعد مات الشجر. زعل القمر وتغير السهر، ضيعنا الغنية بعد مات الشجر. والحكي دار اخبار اخبار، قالوا صار القمر يغار. حلو يا سهرنا عسطح الدار، والحلو قمرنا زعل وطار. بعدها بتتكي عسياج الليلك مثل اللي بعينيها في غيمة ذكر. بعدها بتتكي عسياج الليلك مثل اللي بعينيها في غيمة ذكر. ورفوا الزرار على زنار بدل القمر انزرع قمر.
حلو يا سهرنا عسطح الدار والحلو قمرنا زعل وطار.
حلو يا سهرنا.
The muwashah is often composed using complex rhythmic modes. They often deal with the subject of love, and the structure of a muwashahat is comprised of various sections: dawr, silsila, lazima, khana and qifla, each having particular characteristics with respect to range and the form. Reference should be made to the fact that terza rima pieces or muwashahat still survive in Syria through famous Syrian singers such as Sabah Fakhri and many others. And more about Oriental music next week. Until then, I wish you all the best. And best regards from director Suhail Khoury.
عالضيعة يما عالضيعة عالضيعة وديني وبلا البيعة عالضيعة يما عالضيعة وديني وبلا البيعة عالضيعة يما عالضيعة وديني وبلا البيعة جينا نبيعك بوش التوت ضيعنا القلب ببيروت جينا نبيعك بوش التوت ضيعنا القلب ببيروت جينا نبيعك بوش التوت ضيعنا القلب ببيروت يا شماتة شباب الضيع عالضيعة ياما الضيعة ياما بدنا نحكي قصتنا يا مصيبتنا ويا جرستنا لمين بدنا نحكي قصتنا يا مصيبتنا ويا جرستنا هالشاب سبب لوعتنا بيع قلبه 12 بيعة هالشاب سبب لوعتنا بيع قلبه 12 بيعة جينا نبيعك بوش التوت ضيعنا القلب ببيروت جينا نبيعك بوش التوت ضيعنا القلب ببيروت جينا نبيعك بوش التوت ضيعنا القلب ببيروت يا شماتة شباب الضيع عالضيعة ياما عم يحكوا قصة البيعة جينا نبيعك بوش الدود ضيعنا القلب ببيروت جينا نبيعك بوش الدود ضيعنا القلب ببيروت يا شباب الضيعة يا أما الضيعة يا أما
You're listening to Damascus Radio, the broadcasting service of the Syrian Arab Republic. Before we sign off with the national anthem, here is a final look at the news summary. The armed forces released 30 persons who were kidnapped by the armed terrorist groups south the Vocational Training Institute in Maysalun area in Aleppo. 35 persons from Damascus and its countryside who were involved in the recent events in the country are released. Chairman of the State Duma's International Affairs Committee, Alexei Pushkov, reiterates Russia's firm stance on the situation in Syria. Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Gennady Gatilov renews his country's stance in advocacy of political dialogue in Syria to solve the crisis. Spokesman for the Foreign and Expatriates Ministry Jihad Maqdisi says that some countries that do not want any good for Syria are laying landmines in the path of UN envoy to Syria, Lakhdar al-Ibrahimi. Iraqi security sources announced the killing of 11 Iraqi soldiers, including 2 officers, and the injury of 8 others in an attack on a checkpoint in the town of Bald to the north of Baghdad. And Iran stresses that Canada's move of expelling the Iranian diplomats is an unjustified act, promising an appropriate response. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of our transmission for tonight. Until we meet again tomorrow at the same time and on the same frequencies, we wish you all the best from Damascus Radio, the broadcasting service of the Syrian Arab Republic. Good night.